Hello, hello. My name is Jen, and this is Jen the Bookworm. And if you are new to my channel, welcome. I hope you find something you like. And if you are a returner, then I really appreciate your continued support. I am coming to you today with a book to screen adaptation. I feel like I had some goals to start this series, this book to screen adaptation, and I've only done a couple. I did a Percy Jackson one that I never edited and put it up, but I'm planning on doing that soon. And I have written the synopsis and stuff and the comparisons for a couple of Stephen King ones, and I wanted to make sure to get them out. In particular, I wanted to make sure to do the book to screen adaptation for Stephen King's It. Now, Stephen King's It is a book that it holds a special significance to me in that I DNF'd it when I was in high school. I couldn't get through it. I didn't quite get it, I think. I didn't quite have the patience for it, I think, is more accurate. And then I had an idea about Stephen King based off of it, which I held to until now. So now that I'm a grown adult and have missed all this time with Stephen King, I'm starting to realize I really like him and I really like his books. Now, I always knew I loved the adaptations. I've always liked the movies that come from his novellas, his short stories, and his novels, but I didn't appreciate the writing before. And I'm starting to find I do really appreciate some of the books that I've been introduced to lately. So this one will be dedicated to the book It, as well as the miniseries adaptation and the movie adaptation. I'm planning on covering all of those things in this video. So the first thing that I'd like to make sure I mention is there will be spoilers in this video. If you haven't read it and you want to, then you should probably wait until you read it and watch the adaptations before you review this. I am going to go through spoilers of the book, spoilers of the movie, miniseries, and talk about those things in depth because you can't really compare them unless you do, I think. So I wanted to say that. I also wanted to say that these are just my opinions. This is not objective. This is subjective. So if you disagree with me, great. Put it in the comments below. I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. Try not to hate on me about it. I mean, it's a movie, it's books, it's, a TV series. It's not worth hate, but I would really appreciate some conversation. Some even opposite opinions from me are welcome. So I'm good with that. And in this, I'm going to give you kind of a synopsis. You probably know the book. You probably know the synopsis. I probably don't have to go too heavy in it. This is an old book, and this is the miniseries is from the 90s, and the movies were in the 2000 teens. So they're not that old. So, but they're old enough that I assume that if you were going to watch them, you have. And if you were going to read it, you did. So in this, there are 5 questions that I ask. And that is, what did the book do better? What did the movie do better, or the miniseries? What changes were understandable? What changes were unforgivable? And did the actors embody the characters? And then I go on to ask, wow, I asked 6 questions. I said 5. Counting is fun. How well was this book adapted into a movie or miniseries in this case? So I will go through and kind of rate that. So that's the premise to book to screen. And we will start with the synopsis. So it is about a group of friends, young friends, who live in Derry, Maine. They are, I think, 12 in the 12 range, 12 years old range. And they bond over the shared experiences of seeing an entity that sort of has taken over Derry. And this entity preys upon children and sometimes a little bit older people, older adults, but not usually. Usually they prey on the children of Derry. And one of the main kids in the group, his younger brother, was killed by this entity, and all of them have been somewhat touched by this entity, and they come together to try to defeat it. The story is told in two parts. There is a part where they are children, and there's a part when they are adult. Now, in the book, they are children in the 1950s and they are adults in the 1980s. And in the miniseries, that's the same. In the movie, they aged it up so that they are kids in the 80s and adults in the 2000s, and I think that was just to modernize it. But that's kind of, there's two stories going on simultaneously, kind of interwoven. The book really interweaves it quite a bit more. The movie and miniseries tries to divide them so that the first half or the first movie is really told from the kids' point of view and with all the things that happen to the kids, and then the second movie or second part of the miniseries is really told mostly in the point of view of the adults. But it's about those two timelines and their actions. Both timelines, the same people are trying to defeat the same entity. It's a coming-of-age story at its core, and it's about the power of friendship and unity. It is a much scarier, darker version of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. That's the movie. You're welcome. Goodbye. But it is a much darker, scarier version of that, I suppose. Or maybe I should more accurately say the people who wrote My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic might have read it first and then decide this would be fun for kids. So moving on to the first question, what does the book do better? Everything? No, maybe not everything, but quite a lot. The book does quite a lot better. It is a huge book. There are a lot of moving parts in it. There's a lot to try to turn into a movie or mini series. But even though the miniseries took part in two parts and the movie was two full-length movies, they still didn't manage to get everything into the adaptations that was in the book. There's still quite a bit in the book that wasn't really brought up in those things. Still, in the book, the characters are much richer. You get more of a look into why they are the way they are, what things have influenced them. These are things that probably would drag down the pacing of a movie, but in the book, you can really delve into hanging out with this group of people, what influences each character had. And Stephen King does focus on each character individually so that you can get kind of a richer, deeper idea of them. The book also really goes into a much deeper synopsis of the tragedies that have befallen Derry in the past. So the entity described as it comes every 27-ish years, and something befalls Derry. Not only is it kids being taken, but something big, a big catastrophe happens in Derry. And so like they have the Easter egg hunt at a factory that blew up and killed a bunch of people, and they had a gang of people come in and start shooting everything up, and a bunch of people died. There's a lot that the book will go into, sort of the apathy that this entity creates in the people of Derry. The whole town is infected with a sickness, and you get like hints of that in the adaptations, but you really see it in the book. The whole town is infected on kind of a larger level, and then there are some aspects that are made more extreme on a little smaller level all the way down to kids are being taken, and kids are disappearing at alarming rates, and people just put up signs and they have funerals and they just move on with their life, it seems. Not individually, but kind of as a town. And it's unnatural, but nobody seems to really hit on the unnaturalness of it. And that's really explored in the book better than it is in the movie and the adaptation. Although I would say that there's a scene in the movie where Henry Bowers and his friends are going to cut up Ben Haskins' stomach. And a car with some older people kind of slowly drive by, and you can see that they see what's going to happen. And then they just pointedly look away and keep going, and you can see the red balloon pop up in the back seat. That red balloon popping up in the back seat was genius. That was showing that the apathy of the town sort of comes from this entity. It was a genius little move. I liked it a lot. But it's very much more explored in the pages of the book. And it's 1,116 pages. That's a lot of pages to be able to explore that stuff. So that makes sense. Also, I think the family dynamics in the book were better explored. There were changes made for the movies and stuff that are a little sketchy, or I'm not really sure why the changes were made. Mike has both of his parents in the book, lives on a farm. They seem to be in a stable relationship with one another. But in the miniseries, I don't think they touch on his parents hardly at all. And in the movie, his parents died in a fire, so he doesn't have them. Beverly's mom is still alive in the book, and her dad is a strict man, but seems a little less rapey in the book. In the TV show and in the movie, they made him a single parent, and then they really made him they kind of hinted at that he had molested his daughter, or that he wanted to molest his daughter. It was a little unclear. It was none of those things were ever done on screen, but in the movie they sort of more overtly indicated when he says, "Do your friends know that you're my little girl? That, are you still my little girl?" That it seems like he's alluding to a sexual assault. But that's not in the book. There is a scene where her dad's kind of crazy and chasing her down the street. But, and there is a mention that maybe that he is as strict with her because he has feelings like that, but it's very minorly alluded to. And it's not, the major part of his character is just that he's a strict parent, very strict parent. And he is physically abusive, not out of malice, but out of a sense of this is how he feels he needs to be with her in order to keep her on the straight and narrow, that kind of thing. So the family dynamics are done differently and in some ways better in the book, in my opinion. Another example are like Bill's parents. In the movie and TV show, they seem weepy or angry. Bill's dad was angry when he got the plans from his office. In the book, they're just sort of a shell of their former selves, like a ghost. And there's a couple of times when Bill remarks that part of the reason why he wants to avenge Georgie is because he's hoping that it will make his parents see him, that it will make his parents sort of wake up from the state that they're in due to their son's death. Also in the book, I don't remember the book ever talking about Ben's father dying in Korea. It was mentioned in the miniseries that that's what happened. And I can't remember, honestly, if that's what happened in the book. Part of the disadvantage, I think, to listening on audiobook, which I do primarily, is that you can't kind of flip back to this chapter and reread this paragraph to see what it says. It's a little bit harder to find those things in the audiobook, but especially when it's such a big book. But I don't remember them mentioning him dying in Korea, but that was a big part of the miniseries. And I don't remember the book talking about him living with his aunt. The miniseries, he was living with his aunt and his cousin hated him and it was a whole thing. In the movie, none of that was touched on. He had a room of his own. Aunt and mean cousin not there, and in the book I don't think they were there either. So what did the movie or miniseries do better? In my opinion, the fact that we had to wait so long for one of the more iconic Stephen King books to be turned into movies is because the miniseries was really good for the time and for the effort put into it. I mean, they had some really good actors in it, including, of course, Tim Curry, but John Ritter. A lot of good actors were in the miniseries, and they did a really good job adapting the story. So it took a while for them to get to actual movies of this. But I feel like both the miniseries and the movies did an excellent job of portraying Pennywise the clown. I feel like in the book, obviously the book is where the source material comes from, and the book didn't do a bad job of portraying Pennywise, but it was a little more scattered. Pennywise was a wolf man and a mummy and a leper and a bunch of different things. And it was understood that they were all Pennywise, mostly because they would at some point have the orange fluffy buttons and the silver pants or whatever, but they were not a more unified figure, I guess. That does happen a little bit in the movie and the miniseries, but it feels like Pennywise as the clown, as that entity, is much more visually appealing and much more visually present in the movies and the books. And I really enjoy, the movie and the miniseries, and I really enjoyed the visualization of that character. Now, in the miniseries, Pennywise was played by Tim Curry, and if you talk to 100 people, they'll all have varying degrees of which Pennywise was better, but quite a lot of people loved Tim Curry as Pennywise. I thought Tim Curry did a great job as Pennywise, but I feel like sometimes people's staunch protectiveness over the Tim Curry Pennywise has more to do with they love Tim Curry than that he did the best job playing Pennywise. Also because, and some of this might have been the director, this is the times, this is the budget that they had for the special effects. I mean, those things all combined together, in my opinion, does not lead to a superior Pennywise. I think Tim Curry's portrayal is great, but I think that he adds a little more humor and a little less. I mean, some of it's dark humor, some of it's just humor, and some of it's just silliness. And I think he adds a little more to that. I think Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise is a little less silly and a little more creepy and grotesque and superior, in my opinion. I love Bill Skarsgård's version of Pennywise. I don't dislike at all Tim Curry's version, and I like Tim Curry, but this is the part I'm afraid people are going to fry me over, but I really liked Bill Skarsgård's version of Pennywise better. I think that Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise really encapsulated the creepiness factor of Pennywise. The reason why clowns are kind of freaky. I really liked his mannerisms. His voice acting in that was superb. His cross-eyedness, the fact that he was drooling all the time, all of that was excellent. All of that came together to create a very creepy, scary version of a clown. It really went a long way. I don't have a fear of clowns. That's not my phobia, but it went a long way to showing what people see when they see like regular clowns. This is the reason why they're scary, and I don't think anyone else could do it quite like Bill Skarsgård did. So I really loved his version of Pennywise. Another thing I thought the movie did that I really liked was the love interest between Richie and Eddie. And I know that that's not canon. It's not in the book. All of them loved each other, but in the movie they allude to Richie having a secret, actual romantic love interest for Eddie, and that was the deep dark secret that Pennywise kept poking at him about. And in the end, when after Eddie died, you see Richie at the bridge, and he carves his initials and Eddie's initials in. And I just thought that was such a sweet moment. And I really loved the idea of one of these boys having those kinds of feelings for another, because it wouldn't have been something that he could have. I could absolutely see why he wouldn't have been comfortable telling anybody in that group. Not because they were overtly homophobic necessarily, but they were. It just wouldn't have been well received, I don't believe. And I really believe that's a secret he could have or would have held on to all this time. And then Eddie dies before he ever has a chance to really tell him the depth of his feelings. And I know that that's not canon, but I really loved that addition to the movie. And so that was something I felt like the movie did that was, I don't know if better is the right word, but great. So what changes did they make that were understandable when adapting Stephen King's book into the miniseries and or the movies? It feels like everybody wants to have sex with Beverly at one point in time or another. In the miniseries, it seems like her father wants to have sex with her, Bill wants to have sex with her, Ben wants to have sex with her. In the book, it seems like Richie has a crush on her. I don't know about necessarily wanting to have sex with her because they were 12, but but he seems to have a crush on her, kind of a puppy love thing going for her. In the movies, they still have the Ben and Bill triangle going on, and her father still seems to be interested in, or maybe has tried to have sex with her. And in the book, there is that famous end scene, the orgy scene that everyone comments on that bothers them. That scene didn't really bother me in the book. It wasn't in the movie or in the miniseries, and that's an understandable change. I mean, I don't think that would have come across on screen very well, or would have been well received. It would have shut down the whole project, and it just wasn't worth it to add it in. But it just seems like everyone wants to have sex with this girl. Also, in the miniseries and the movies, Henry Bowers is sexually harassing her at different points. In the adaptations, the themes are prevalent, but they're kind of toned down a little bit. They don't show Richie's crush. Henry Bowers' attention seems to be more about making her feel uncomfortable rather than necessarily wanting her. And in the book, her dad wasn't quite so rapey. So they made these changes, and I do kind of understand why they made that change in the miniseries in the book, making her dad more aggressive in that way. They wanted to up the creep factor. They wanted to make him a bad person, or show why she has a desire to be away from home all the time, and why hanging out with a bunch of guys in the boroughs or the barrens, the barrens, is preferable to being at home. So maybe why she dresses like she does, like a tomboy and stuff like that. Sometimes that is a reaction to being sexualized too early on and stuff like that. So I mean, I understand why they changed the dad, but that is a change that was made. In the book, they seem to treat Henry Bowers a little bit differently than they do in either the miniseries or the movie. In the book, he's referred to as one of the older kids, which indicates he's not in the same grade as the other kids. That he's an extra big bully because he's picking on kids in a younger grade picking on kids at a younger grade than his. In the TV show, in the miniseries, he's just a bully. They don't really go into his background a whole lot. He's just a kid who's a bully. He just likes to push kids around. He really doesn't have a whole lot of depth to him. The fact that he succumbs to Pennywise is not really surprising because he's a bully, and that's the only thing about him that we know. In the movie, we get a little more depth with Henry Bowers because we kind of see he comes from a strict dad who doesn't seem like he's very nice. His dad's the town sheriff, and he's a town sheriff, and he has kind of an idea about masculinity that he wants passed down to his son, and his son seems to disappoint him, and he's not a nice man. At one point, he takes out his gun and he shoots at his son's feet. I mean, he wasn't aiming for his son, but an accident still could have happened, and to him, that wasn't acceptable. It was acceptable for there to have the risk of that accident happening just to teach his son that lesson or whatever. You start to get kind of an idea of why he would be susceptible to Pennywise and to why he grew up as a bully. A lot of times we find out in reality that bullies were bullied themselves at home, at school, wherever. This really kind of gives some depth to Henry Bowers in a way that the miniseries didn't. In the book, though, he's much more villainous. I think the adaptations sort of make him a little nicer, make him a little less psychotic or whatever. In the book, his father was a farmer, an ignorant farmer, racist to the extreme, ignorant to the extreme, he just did his farming and he drank, and they were so poor. He had a girlfriend or whatnot that would make a pot of beans for him on Sunday, and then they would just eat on those beans all week long, which I don't know if that's not a recipe for wanting to kill somebody. I don't know what is. But he was poor. He was poor. His father was harsh. His father was kind of psychotic, kind of crazy, he was really unstable. And that's what he had. That's what was raising him, was an unstable personality, extreme racist, extreme ignorant person. And so it makes a lot more sense why Henry Bowers is who he is and how he develops into what he develops into. But they really kind of, in the book, show a lot more, like when he kills Mike's dog and some of the things that he does to the kids, to other people. He's really it's more than he's just a surface level bully. He is showing signs of psychopathy as he's growing up. So I think that they really kind of tone him down and maybe flatten him out and do a disservice in the movies and adaptations. But it is an understandable change, because if you go into too much depth into Henry Bowers, you're kind of using up your time to do the other things that you need to accomplish, things that are more important, I guess, to accomplish in the adaptations. But that is a change that they made. Another thing that they did, it's kind of an understandable change, and there's a lot of them that I'm not mentioning, but this is one that I am going to mention. I understand why they didn't have Bill cheat on his wife in the movies, or the miniseries. And it was clear in the book that he had a thing for Beverly, and when he met and married Audra, she looks like Beverly. She was almost a surrogate for Beverly. In the end of the book and in the end of the miniseries, it's clear that he actually has desire for Audra individually, separate of Beverly. But some of his choices when it came to his wife had to do with Beverly. But in the book, he cheats on Audra with Beverly, and it was sort of a, I don't know, what happens in Derry stays in Derry kind of thing. Like, it's okay to cheat as long as it's in service to taking down a child-killing clown. Then it's fine. but they didn't really add Audra in so much, and she does kind of play a part towards the end of the book. They kind of have her there, but she's kind of a throwaway character, in my opinion, in the movies. And I guess I can understand that because you'd have to really go into more depth, and they didn't have as much time as they would have had to have had for that. So the next question is, what changes were unforgivable? I don't know if unforgivable, I think unforgivable might be a little too strong, the changes that they made. I guess I kind of understand most of the changes, but there are a couple of things I would like to have seen them not change. Like the family dynamics. They didn't have to change it to where Beverly doesn't have a mom and her dad is less, they could have left it like they did in the book, where her dad's just strict and mean and her mom is still there. They didn't do that, though. And I don't understand Mike's parents in the movies. They seem to allude to that they burned to death in a fire that had something to do with crack. Why is his parents being portrayed like that? In the movie, his parents are alive and fine. In the book, his parents are alive and fine. In the book, he seems to be raised by his grandfather, and his grandfather does not seem to be a nice man. It just seems like that's a change that didn't need to be made. It seems like in the movie, all of that was meant to just introduce the weapon that they used to kill the lambs. That could have been introduced in any number of ways beyond what they did. So I didn't really like the way that they changed that. Also, I'm not sure, how did the evolution of Eddie's mom come about? In the book, she was not fat or disgusting or whatever. She was thin, pinched, kind of just a worrywart about everything, worried about her son and hypochondriac on his behalf and probably her own. And Eddie really seems to love his mother and respect his mother. And the only reason why he's willing to defy his mother is because he has this hero worship of Bill. But in the book, in the miniseries, she was more portrayed like she was in the book. In the movie, they turned her into kind of a weird, I don't know, they made her weird. She's a fat character, and she was kind of fat people can be pretty people. Fat people are oftentimes pretty people. It was like they tried to make her a gross, disgusting version of fat, as opposed to being able to comb her hair or dress herself or not look like, I don't know. I didn't like the way she looked. Not that I didn't like that she was fat, but I didn't like the way they portrayed fat people even. And then in the movie, they also had Eddie's wife be a fat person, although a much prettier fat person. But they wanted to draw this correlation. He married someone just like his mother. In the book, he didn't marry. He just was still with his mother. He just grew up to continue living with his mother, which is kind of a understandable progression of that character. I don't know that his mother would ever let him get married to somebody else. So the mother and the wife were both portrayed as being manipulative and such in the same way as in the book. The mother was in the book, but I don't understand why they needed to change her appearance so much and put so much emphasis on that. I didn't understand that evolution. I didn't think that was necessary at all. Also, I thought the kids in the movies were less enjoyable than the kids in the miniseries or in the book. In the movies, they were just too vulgar. It's not that I don't think that they would have been vulgar to some extent, or that they would have used the F word occasionally, or that they would refer to sex. All that is understandable. It was just all the time. It was all the time. Everything was turned into a your mama joke, or I just fucked your sister joke, or whatever. Everything. And it didn't need to be that way. It didn't need to be that in your face about it. It wasn't like that in the books. It didn't need to be like that in the movie. It just seemed like they were trying to throw in shock value. And honestly, when you have a big killer clown taking the arms off of little boys and stuff, you probably don't need, F-bombs and sex jokes from 12-year-olds to cause the shock value. So I didn't like that change that they made in the movie. Although I think the movie was excellent. I loved the movies and have rewatched them a million times. That's just a part of the movies that I didn't really enjoy. I didn't think you needed to have them be that abrasive. I don't think either the miniseries or the movies portrayed Eddie Kazbrak correctly. I know he's not the main focus of a lot of the group dynamics and stuff, but he is an important backbone character in that group. And part of Eddie was that he hero worshipped Bill. Bill was everything that Eddie wanted to be. I think the only thing that Eddie didn't envy was his stutter, but he was handsome and he was charismatic and he was the natural leader of the group. And in the book, when he came back to Derry as an adult, he became the natural leader of the group again. And Eddie just had this hero worship of him that was hit on over and over again in the book. And I really believe that while he loved and respected his manipulative, overbearing mother, the reason why he was willing to do things that he knew she wouldn't approve of is because his hero worship of Bill superseded that love and respect that he had for his mother. Until he found out that she was giving him placebos and stuff like that, he didn't have reason to distrust her. He didn't have reason to dislike her. He seemed to love and respect her, but Bill and his being drawn to Bill really made him do some of those things that maybe he wouldn't normally have done. And they didn't really put that in either the miniseries or the movies. And in fact, in the movies, they changed his personality a lot. They made him a much more aggressive, indignant character. They made him an angry character. And I don't know why they did that change, because I don't think that that's the way he was ever really portrayed in the book. He wasn't portrayed that way in the miniseries either. They just made him a more angry, indignant version of himself, and I didn't see any of the hero worship of Bill, so I didn't see any reason why he would be gallivanting around in the barrens with the kids to begin with. He would know his mom wouldn't want him down there. He would know, do you know how many bacteria and this and that and the other? He wouldn't go anywhere near there. It's not a sterile enough environment. But he does because he worships Bill. However, there's no worship in the movie. There's no love-respect relationship with his mom. More like almost a fear thing going on with his mom. But I just didn't like the way that they portrayed him in the movies or the miniseries. I don't think it was true to the book. So in the ending of the book, the miniseries, and the movies, it's vastly different from each other. In the ending of the book, there's a large catastrophe, which makes sense because what you hear, what Mike has been telling them, or Ben, or whomever, in whatever version of the story that we're talking about, the one who's the historian, because it's Mike in one version, it's Ben in another, but they talk about how every 27-ish years, and then it culminates with a big catastrophe, and then Pennywise goes away for a while, and kids aren't being taken, and bad things aren't happening, and people rebuild, and then it comes back. So the big ending, the culmination of all the things that Pennywise is doing, there's a big bang in the book where, the main streets of Derry all collapse down into the sewers. But that's not in either the miniseries or the movie. It feels kind of like the climax is centered on the main characters, more on a character level than on a dairy level. And in the book, they kind of still show the big catastrophic thing that happens at the end of the reign of it, where they don't really show that in the movies or the miniseries. I think in the ending of the miniseries, they showed the bike ride that cured Audra, which was in the book. In the movies, they don't show that. They don't really, in the movies, they don't really, there's a little bit on Audra. They don't touch on the part that Beverly's partner plays, and they kind of change things up. She's married, she's not married. It's all over the place with Beverly. But her partner Tom plays a part in the end, and then the reason why Audra is captured, and that's all left out completely. So all the endings are kind of a little bit different. So the next question is, did the actors embody the characters? Yes. There wasn't, in both the miniseries and in the movies, there wasn't a character or an actor that I thought, that's not the right part for that person, or that's not the right person for that part. I thought they all did really good. I particularly liked Skarsgård's Pennywise. I liked the movie version of Beverly better than the miniseries version of Beverly, the adult. The kid was fine. The kid was fine in both versions, but the adult version of Beverly in the miniseries, she was just so flighty and flirty and damsel in distress, and she was annoying and whiny, and I just didn't like her. And other than the fact that she was, I guess, pretty, what did they see in her? She, as an adult, she was just sort of, I don't know, she wasn't great. She was so scared of everything, uncomfortable, anxious. She wasn't a tough girl at all. And I kind of like the version where they make her a little bit more of a tough girl. In the movies, she's a little bit more of a, pull your bootstraps up and get out there and fight with the guys. And I liked that version of her better than the miniseries version. But other than that, I really liked all of the acting, all of the characterizations, all of that. They did great with that. The last question, how well did the book get adapted into a movie and miniseries? How successful were they in adapting Stephen King's It? I think both adaptations were very good in their own ways. I don't think that they were exact. Neither of them exactly adapted the book 100%, but that's to be expected. And in some ways, I don't know that you even want that for the movie version. I don't think you necessarily want to see everything that's in the book. You just want to see most of the things that are in the book. You want to see the important things. But I think that both of them have great merit. I think both of them did pretty good. I think the miniseries was a little more faithful to the words on page than the book was, or than the movie was. But I thought that the movie was great as well, and it was updated. I think rewatching the miniseries recently, as I have, there were parts in it that were like, okay, that's cheesy and stuff. It was a sign of the times. It was the 90s. It was what it was, and it was pretty good budget for a miniseries for TV, whereas the other were movies for theater. So you're going to get a different budget. You're going to get a different quality level. But I thought both adaptations were pretty good. So I gave the book a 4 out of 5. I would give the miniseries a 3 out of 5. And I would give the movies a 4 out of 5. So altogether, the adaptation, in my opinion, was a good 4 out of 5. It was pretty solid. I would watch the miniseries again. I would watch the book. I'm going to watch the movies again, and I would reread the book. So all in all, I'd say this was a very successful adaptation. So I hope that you have enjoyed the way I broke this down and some of the comments I made. I hope that they aren't necessarily a regurgitation of what a lot of other people have said. I purposely didn't watch other people's videos or reviews on it to try not to be tainted by that. I didn't want to say what everyone else was saying, but I wanted what I said to be my authentic thoughts. So I hope that I brought up some things that make you think, or that you've enjoyed this. And if you have some opinions about what I've said, please leave them in the comments below. If you have a change or something that they did in the movies that they shouldn't have, or something that they did in the book that they didn't show and you wish they had, leave those comments down there for me. Let me know what you think. I'm very interested. If you disagree with my pick for who's the best Pennywise, let me know. I'm open for it. If you liked this content, please consider giving me a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to the channel. It's free to do and it helps me out, and it gives you an opportunity to see other videos that I do in the future, particularly if you hit that notification button. It will let you know anytime I put a video out. So with that, I hope that you have enjoyed this, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.